Hi everyone, it's Kelly here. Welcome to my channel if this is your first time. Welcome back if you've been before. Lovely to have you either way. On this channel we talk books, and today I am wrapping up 2 months, the last 2 months of 2025, because I hadn't had a chance to do it before. I'm a little bit behind. So I'm going to put it all into one video and hopefully it won't be too long. In November I read 3 books and I'm going to try and zip through these. I'm not going to talk about them in too much detail, just to give you a basic review and let you know how I went with my reading over those last 2 months of 2025. So the first book that I finished is this big gigantic coffee table book called Modern Australian Women Artists, and it is written by Anne Gray, Caroline Jordan and Juliana Hooper. I really enjoyed this collection. There's a lot of pictures in this as well. I had been reading it a little bit while I was right before bed, etc. Oops, something's about to fall out of it. So it's got these really beautiful colour illustrations in it, and it was very enjoyable to read the essays and to look at all of the images. It does what it says on the tin. This is just a lot of modern Australian women artists, and I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. What else did I say about it? Yes, I also learnt about some new artists, well, new to me anyway, artists I hadn't heard of before, and I'm definitely going to look into them further. So that was an exciting start to the month of November. I'm going to put that down because it's super, super heavy. The next book I read, I don't have a physical copy of. I read this book as an ebook, and that is The Once and Future Witches by Alix E. Harrow. And I've written here, dude, the action does not stop. This literally, there were multiple times in this book where I thought we were coming to the end of the, and then I looked at how much further we had to go. And I was like, I'm literally only 25% of the way in, and this already feels like the climax of the novel. And it didn't stop. It started with action and it just kept going, thing after thing after thing. It's not a pace that I can sustain as a reader. So for that reason, I gave it 3.5 stars. But I did enjoy the story, and I enjoyed the characters, but the tension was just too much for me. It was just go, 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 and you were just wondering the entire time how things were going to resolve for these poor people. It was just a lot. But I've written here, I feel exhausted and now I need to rest for a bit to recover. Perhaps that's why I read only 3 books in November. The last book that I read in November was The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden. This is a book that won the Women's Prize in 2025. And I quite enjoyed this as well. I gave it 3.75 stars. And yeah, I didn't realise I've written it's a debut, so I'm assuming that's correct. So I've called it an absolutely sparkling debut. Wow, that's good praise from me. The writing is evocative and tense, I've written, and the character of Isabel is so tightly drawn. In many ways, this is a story about women and what they must do to survive, but it's also about unfairness and cruelty and racism and the regular people who profit from the misfortunes of others. The ending of this is what kind of lost at some points for me. It felt a little bit rushed and convenient, but it was otherwise a really great read, and I'm really glad to have read that one. Moving on to December now. I started off the month by finishing this book called P.A.W.S. by Kate Foster, and that's P.A.W.S. Because it's an acronym for a dog show. This was a sweet little story, and it's an Own Voices autistic author about this young autistic boy who is on a quest to make friends. And the way that he thinks he's going to be able to make friends is by being really great at stuff. And one of the things that he tries to be really great at is a video game. And the other thing he tries to be really great at is training his dog to enter a dog show. And things do not always go according to plan for him, but as you can imagine, things turn out pretty well in the end, just maybe not the way that he was expecting them to turn out. But I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was lovely, a very wholesome ending to the story, very, very sweet. I would recommend this for middle grade readers. I think it's really lovely. The next book that I finished in December was The Rot by Evelyn Araluen. This is a poetry collection. I read her previous collection called Drop Bear a couple of years ago, and I loved it, gave it 5 stars. This one didn't connect with me in quite the same way, but I did end up giving it 4 stars. And this is definitely, I've written here, rage-filled. It's a very, in many ways, very angry poetry collection, and I'm here for it. I'm here for that rage because it's all very justified, in my opinion. So Evelyn Araluen is an Aboriginal Australian poet, and she is writing from that perspective, but also looking outwards to the world as well. And a lot of, injustice and things like that is what kind of spurs her writing, particularly what's happening, the genocide that's happening in Palestine right now is definitely something that is making her feel rage, and justifiably so. I think I didn't connect, as I said, I didn't connect with this as much as I did with Drop Bear, but the final section of this, because it's divided up into sections, was absolutely, I've written here, banger filled. There were a lot of really great poems heading towards the end of this collection, and I also got a bit teary in the final poem too. So I gave this one 4 stars. It's a good collection. I think Drop Bear is, as a collection, stronger, but this one is also very good. The next book that I finished, thankfully, because I'd been working on it for some time, is James by Percival Everett. I also read Huckleberry Finn in 2025 so that I could read this book, because I wanted to be able to get the references, etc. And I think the first half of this book was very clever, a clever reimagining of the Huckleberry Finn story from the POV of the character Jim from Huckleberry Finn, who wants to be known as James. That's the name that he identifies with. So it's sort of like, not an alter ego exactly, but like the true person. And I thought it was quite clever. But at some point, the story here diverges from Huckleberry Finn, and there's elements that are brought into the story that I just don't think work, in my opinion. For example, the Huck's origins, I'll keep that vague, so it's not, because that would be a spoiler. And the high stakes rescue that happens towards the end of the book, and also another thing that James does that is not in the original Huckleberry Finn story, that's like, he does a crime basically, and I just thought that those changes changed who this person is and the story to such a degree, like it was quite jarring and really out of keeping with the first half of the book. Like it was like they were 2 separate books. And I think if the author had stuck to it being more of just a retelling of Huckleberry Finn, but from this really clever perspective, I think this would have worked better for me, but it didn't, unfortunately. So I ended up just giving this a 3, unfortunately. It just didn't work for me. Also, the pacing of the second half felt really way off for me as well, and it felt really half-baked, unfortunately. Like the storytelling in the second half was half-baked. So yeah, I don't get the hype. I mean, I kind of do. I think, as I said, the first half of this I thought was really clever. And that bit I was like, yeah, I'm seeing this. I'm seeing what he's putting down here, and I think it's really good. And then when that change happened, it just, yeah, to me it didn't work, unfortunately. So I know I'm I'm not in the majority here. A lot of people love this book, but I just thought it was just okay, unfortunately. Okay, let's move on. The next book that I finished in December was a Christmas story collection, and if you were watching along when I was doing my Vlogmas videos, you may have seen me finish this collection, which I started back in 2024. So this is the Everyman's Pocket Classics Christmas Stories, and it is edited by Diana Secker Tesdell. This was a pretty mid collection, unfortunately. It wasn't that exciting overall. It did contain some pretty great stories, but it also contained stories that were just okay, and some that I actively disliked. So this, I just got a solid 3 stars from me. Not a collection that I would necessarily recommend, but I'm pleased that I got through all of the stories in that one. The next one that I finished was not this version of it, but it was A Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens. The version that I listened to was performed by Sir Patrick Stewart, and this was a re-listen, a reread for me on Christmas Eve. It's a book that I revisit every Christmas Eve, and I really love it every single time, and it remains a 5-star read for me. So if you haven't already had a go at listening to that version of A Christmas Carol, I highly recommend it when Christmas comes around in 2026. Okay, then I finished a poetry collection called Unexpected Clearing by Rose Lucas. Rose Lucas wrote another poetry collection that I loved and read earlier in 2025, and I thought that other collection was a 5-star collection. This was a 4-star collection for me, and it's more so about the cohesiveness of the collection as opposed to the poems individually. Individually, I thought there were some really beautiful poems in here, and I think that Rose Lucas is really a master of nature poetry. It's evocative, it's beautiful when she's writing about nature, and she can be quite descriptive in a poetic way, which I really like. I appreciate that. There are also several poems in here on the illness and subsequent passing of her mother, and 2 of those poems really made me cry. Those were The Call and Full Fathom. I thought they were really beautiful poems and very moving. But yeah, as I said, as a collection, this wasn't as cohesive as it could have been. But I loved many of the poems in here, and I would recommend it still. I think Rose Lucas is excellent. And if ever she puts out another collection, I will definitely pick it up. The next book that I finished in December, as you can see, we have quite a few books in December. Only 3 in November, but we had quite a few in December. I think it was 8 by the end. Is The Mushroom Tapes by Helen Garner, Chloe Hooper, and Sarah Krasnostein. This book I picked up as an ebook. I borrowed it from the library, so I don't have a physical copy of it. And this is a book that is all based around the trial that occurred in 2025 of Erin Patterson, who was found guilty of poisoning and subsequently killing her estranged husband's parents and his auntie, the sister of the mother. This is a true crime. This is a non-fiction book, and this was basically what happened was these 3 writers that I just mentioned went to the trial, so they were present on a lot of the days of the trial, and also they had planned to do something around it, so they recorded themselves, so they did audio recordings of their conversations in the car, in the hotel, etc., etc. And so it was really fascinating sort of getting their perspective on the trial and on the crime, and all of the things that kind of surrounded this huge media story that became an international story. So I'm sure that even some international viewers would know what trial I'm talking about. Basically, yeah, it's written kind of like a transcript, and I don't know that I particularly loved that style necessarily of of it being that format, but I did find the conversations really fascinating, and I ended up reading this over just 2 reading sessions. So I picked it up and then finished it really, really quickly because it was so compelling. So I would recommend it. I gave it 4 stars. It was a very interesting book. And the last book that I finished on the very last day of December was this poetry collection that I had been using as a daily devotional. It's called 365 Poems for Life, which is compiled by Allie Esiri. I unfortunately did not love this as a whole. I loved doing a poetry devotional and reading poems every day, but the poems themselves were a real mixed bag. Some faves, some new favourites, but a whole lot of like really mid to dull poems, unfortunately. But it was an interesting project. The other thing I would say about this is it is very Northern Hemisphere in its season, in its cycle. So a lot of the poems follow the seasons, but they're Northern Hemisphere seasons. I live in Australia, so I was reading wintry poems in the middle of summer and summery poems in the middle of winter. So, you know, it didn't work internationally. I believe this person is based in the UK. I believe. I may be incorrect about that, but I think it's the UK. Anyway, lots and lots of different poets in here. So yeah, in terms of it being a big overview of different poets, I think it's fine, but there's lots of other collections that do that too. So I wouldn't particularly recommend this one, but it is very pretty. Anyway, that's that one. 365 Poems for Life. I gave it 3 stars. So that brings us to the end. Those are all the books I read in November and December. Let me know down in the comments if you've read any of them, if you have different or similar opinions to me. Would love to hear all about it in the comments. And hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I will catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.